Hello, everyone. I know some of you probably watched. I mean, it didn't have many views, but I know a couple of you probably watched the couple other videos, Resident Evil 6 I have. Looking at them, I was like, man, these were a little too long. I wanted to go in depth, but, I don't think anybody's really going to want to watch a 40-minute review, especially, if it's just a still image and a guy talking in the background. So I'm going to try to dumb it down to basically a general review of all three campaigns now that I have all three of them done. I have not done Ada's campaign, but, that's pretty much an extra. It's not part of the main story. It just gives you some more background in case there were some things you didn't understand. Okay, so I played Chris's first. I'm going to talk about his, and I have a few pluses and minuses, and it doesn't really amount to me giving it a score, but it's just like, okay, here's things I liked, here's things I didn't like. For Chris's scenario, the first few chapters were fun. It did start to kind of get a little tedious, a little repetitive. But then the last act happened, and I was like, okay, it's kind of in this seesaw type of deal. It's got some high points, got some low points. I'm also going to say that I liked Piers. I mentioned that in the first video, or not the first video, but the two that I uploaded and then took down. I liked Piers. He was the one that kind of got Chris back into being Chris. The problem with Chris's character was that he had seen BSA agents die, and then now he's acting like this guy that's just, he's hell-bent on revenge. And I'm like, wouldn't he have been like that in the first, or in Resident Evil 5 when all those guys were dying left and right to Ouroboros or Las Plagas or any of that? But that didn't happen, so it's whatever. But another point I already reached on is that shootouts do become boring. They really do. It doesn't create any kind of tension. It's you and Piers and the couple of guys with you taking down more Yavos or whatever they're called. And just give me a sec. The Yavos, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but the Yavos are not really intimidating enemies. They're just grunts. They don't think very well. They don't act very well. They're there. You shoot a few of them in the limbs and stuff, and they mutate differently. That's fine and dandy, but the problem is they're still simple enemies to beat, and they create no tension. They create no sense of, oh shit, I've got all these Yavos coming at me. I gotta take them out, or else I'm going to be surrounded and overwhelmed. It never comes to that because they always try to hide from you. They always try to find cover and all that other crap. And that's another thing, is the cover system is fucking useless. What's weird is that I actually used it when I was playing as Leon, but I will get into that as to why I actually used it when I was playing as Leon. There were a couple of cool bosses in Chris's scenario. One being this invisible snake. It's like Jan makes his return as an invisible snake, and I was just like, whoa, holy crap! It's freaking invisible snake, and you run through this building, you're chasing after it, and it's picking your guys off one by one until it's down to you, Piers, and this one other guy. But the other guy inevitably ends up dying. It's kind of obvious that he's just not a throwaway character, but a fodder character. But I mean, he has his high points, and he goes out with a bang and all that other good stuff. And then you fight him, and you get introduced to a new enemy, which is this basically swarm of, I guess, insects. And then there's another big fat ass one that comes out whenever you do enough damage to like the body of the insect group. But that was one enemy I thought was completely pointless. It was a useless enemy and a dumb one to boot, because it was annoying, and it never comes off. It like this big guy just comes out of nowhere. You're like, where the fuck were you? He could be all nestled up inside of the group, but once they like disperse and stuff like that, you're like, oh, I don't see him. And then they come back together, and then you do enough damage, and then he pops out, and then he just kind of floats around like, derp. What do I do? Oh shit, I'm exposed, and then you kill him. The final boss of Chris's scenario, though, was actually a kind of a cool boss, kind of a creepy one at that. It was basically this giant tentacle monster type deal, and it looked kind of like a mix between a squid and the monster from Cloverfield. And then in addition to it having like this human head, so it really looked kind of odd and really eerie, or not eerie, but really just unsettling. Not really scary, not enough to really intimidate you. Once you figure out how to beat it, it becomes a simple process. The ending, though, was something. This is something that I think is just hilariously bad. I mean, not even Resident Evil Director's Cut hilariously bad, not quite to that degree, but still pretty fucking bad. Basically, the guy you're working with Piers, and this is going to be this review will have spoilers in it, but it's because I have to touch on things I just think kind of made the game good, made the game bad, or didn't really do anything, or just kind of made it funny, which really wouldn't make it good or bad. It just happens. Piers gets his arm chopped off basically when you're fighting the last boss. You know, the boss like knocks you and Piers back. Piers gets his arm jabbed into like this spike, and then this monster freaking throws a big ass shard of metal which pretty much slices the rest of his arm off, and then he just says fuck it, just rips himself from his arm. And then they had retrieved a C-virus sample, and he injects it into him, and he grows like this big ass claw that for whatever reason can shoot electricity. So you have at it with the boss. He helps you out, and then he holds it in place, and then you basically finish it off. Once you're escaping, Chris is, telling him, like, you're gonna make it, and then, in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, he ain't gonna make it. It's obvious he ain't gonna make it, because the virus is eventually gonna overwhelm him. But once they're getting into this escape pod, he does kind of a noble thing, and it makes his character that much more likable, in that he sacrifices himself so Chris can get out of there. He basically dies for his hero, his comrade, his brother-in-arms, that sort of deal. And so, Chris is like, no, damn it, no. And then Piers launches him off, he shoots off. And then lo and behold, the boss comes back. And speaking of which, this boss has like 2 fake deaths. As a matter of fact, that was a recurring trend with all of Resident Evil 6's final bosses, that they all have these fucking fake deaths. And, I mean, some of them worked, but there were others that I was like, oh, wow, is this guy going to be fucking dead or not? Especially Leon's. Again, I'll get into that here in a bit. But the final boss is charging after you, and then you see like this big Kamehameha wave of fucking electricity just shoot out, and I was like, oh man, Pierce just went all Super Saiyan on this bitch. And then he kills the final boss, and then Chris escapes in a pod, and oh, lo and behold, we have Happily Ever After with Chris. I was hoping for a cameo with Jill. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and I kind of thought it could have happened at the very end, where Jill kind of walks in and just sees Chris all, like kind of somber, kind of sad that Piers is dead and that he's lost, his teammates, and that he nearly just lost himself and his own trip for revenge. But it's actually just this random soldier that walks up to him and says, "Sir, we have new orders." And then Chris is like, "All right, I'll be there." And then they go off, and then Chris is off on another mission for, I guess the next installment of Resident Evil, if that happens. Which, speaking of which, the way that all 3 campaigns ended, yeah, they definitely left room for a sequel, and this definitely isn't the closure of it. I would like to see one more big Resident Evil where you have all the characters from the past games, all the ones that matter anyways, get together, have at it one last finale, and then from there either end the series and make some spin-off games and stuff like that so it's still a profitable franchise, or reboot the series altogether. And then I'll get more into that for my closing arguments, or closing points. The biggest problem with Chris's scenario, though, is that it plays exactly like Call of Duty. It's you and a group of soldiers against terrorists that just happen to be enhanced with bioweapons. I mean, it is verbatim, almost verbatim, I should say, like Call of Duty. So, I mean, I don't mind the action take that Resident Evil's heading in. I don't mind that at all. But I do hate that it's going a little too extreme to that, in that it doesn't feel like Resident Evil anymore. It feels like a complete copy over of Call of Duty, only it has biological weapons instead of just terrorists with a political statement. And that's another thing that really grated on me. Is a lot of the villains in this game were fucking politically motivated, and it didn't go well with how the other villains acted. Like Chris had the God complex, Alexia had the God complex, Alfred was just fucking insane, and probably had an incestuous love relationship with his sister, or at least an obsession with it. And then you have all the Umbrella bosses that just wanted, to be God, basically, and they were all conspiring against each other, and it made for this kind of like, just this dark, gritty world where people are just trying to survive and shit's just not going well. But the one in this one, you don't really understand what his motivation is at all. So he's pretty much a less than memorable villain altogether. And the same with the Ada clone, the other girl that looks like Ada but isn't Ada. And that is another thing that I thought was just fucking wow, just laughably stupid. But anyway, I'll get into that because it's more covered in Leon's scenario. But in short, Chris's scenario was very weak, very poorly done. Could have been done a lot better. It could have gone a better direction, but it just turns into this Call of Duty type of deal. Moving on to Jake's scenario, His is actually a pretty much a thriller, I would almost say. Well, not really a thriller, but like a very fast paced pursuit where him and Sherry are on the run from this big motherfucker who looks like, basically it's a take two on Nemesis, although not quite as strongly. Doesn't impact you as strongly as Nemesis did in Resident Evil 3, but then again, that monster isn't the main focus. However, he does make for an intimidating enemy. There is this one room also in the beginning. It's a small bit, but it's there. And you walk into this room, and there's just nothing but mannequins around you, and their eyes are all blacked out, and it is creepy. I'm like, Resident Evil should make an environment like this, not just you're out, and you're just having fun basically, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna blow up all the zombies and all the monsters coming at me. Ooh, what fun! Like in Chris's scenario, you have like the Yavo are using tanks and artillery and all this other crap. I'm like, really? This is the direction we're going? Even Resident Evil 5 wasn't this bad, nor was Resident Evil 4. But, whatever. This one also suffered from a lot of what Chris's did, but it also had a lot of high points. A lot more high points, and the story was very well put together. Very well put together, and it made Jake a lovable fucking character. He is, by all means, probably the most shining character in this game, next to maybe Leon, in terms of like how good the characters all just came together. His character was great. I loved the shit out of him. Sherry was great too. Not as good as Helena. I thought Helena was a better character, but she definitely had her own stake in things, and she definitely had a very memorable performance and such like that. And I hope to see her in future installments now that she's all grown up and out there kicking ass, taking names. There was a bit in the Jake and Sherry scenario where you're basically in this tundra and you're looking for these 3 fucking card keys, and that becomes a chore pretty much because you're running around this environment, Yavos are coming after you, and I think zombies would have worked better because they would have created a little more tension because you don't know if you're actually looking at one or if one's there or what. The Yavo, they come and make their presence well fucking known because they're all grunting and shouting, they're all screaming like they're fucking having a party. Zombies, on the other hand, they're all quiet, and you hear them breathing, but you can't tell exactly where they're at, especially when all the rooms are like dark and shit. So it's like hard to see them, and when they pop up, you're like, oh shit, zombie! What the fuck do I do? Oh, shoot it! And then you panic and freak out at times. But yeah, had they gone a little bit differently, that bit could have been a lot better instead of just feeling like a chore where you have to dodge Yavos and look for these card keys that Sherry, for whatever reason, didn't just put in a fucking microchip. There were a lot of quick time events in this game. A lot of them. All 3 scenarios had their fair share, although Chris had the fewest, but that's because Chris spent more time shooting monsters and Yavos than doing anything. There was no complexity to his game. There was a bit of it in Leon's, but there wasn't a whole lot in Jake and Sherry's. All it really was just basically you two on the run from these guys, and then the people you're working for, you think you can trust them, but you really can't. And you come to find that out. If you play their story first, you're like, oh yeah, great. And then you come to find out that, yeah, the people you're working for really aren't that great. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, you have a drill battle with the Nemesis Type 2. Or, that's the wrong way to call him. I forgot his name. I think it's Ustanak or something like that. Yeah, actually, yeah, it's Ustanak. Or Ustanak. It's used to something. Eustace. Stupid dog! You made me look bad. Booga wooga wooga. But anyways, you have a drill battle with him. Basically, he has this metal arm, and it does make for a good kind of, he's basically a cyborg, and he's kind of an intimidating one to boot. So, I'm just like, oh shit. So you have this drill battle with him. It's a quick time event, but it's kind of fun at the same time. And I was like, battle bots, yeah! So, I had fun with that. There was one quick time event there's actually 2 of them that really stand out. No, wait, 3. Although 2 of them are kind of the same. One of them is in Jake and Sherry's, and that's where you have to basically do a quick time event and just get a card key out of a guy's hand. An open hand to boot. It's not like he's been frozen over time and his fingers are all like, stiff and stuff, and you have to like pry them apart. No, this guy's hand is clear open, and the card is actually dangling just outside of his palm, so you could just lift it up, pull it, good to go. But no, it has to be a fucking quick time event and all this other bullshit. Jake and Sherry also work well together. Their chemistry is great. Jake is this kind of just nonsensical guy. He's just like, yeah, whatever. As long as I get paid, I really don't give a shit what happens. And then he just has all these smart aleck comments. I mean, it does sound like he's a douchebag, but he really isn't. You know, he starts to grow on you. At first you're like, wow, this guy's kind of a douche, but he's awesome at the same time. He's basically being a douche, but being awesome by being a douche. And then Sherry's all like, you just don't take anything seriously, do you? You know, people's lives are at stake. This guy is my friend, blah, blah, blah. Jake's just like, yeah, whatever, fuck you. But eventually he does him and Sherry kind of have this, you know, they start to bond on each other. Although, I will say, Resident Evil has finally learned how to do a love story. It becomes obvious that there's going to be like some kind of a love story between those two, but they don't utter the forbidden words of "I love you" after meeting for 2 hours. But they kind of have that little connection together. It's like, yeah, you know, they're both children of fucked up fathers that really fucked both of them over, so they share a lot in common, as opposed to Ada and Leon, where it was just like two strangers just having to get together and survive, you know, the apocalypse of the city. So, you know, their relationship just works well just based on all the factors that could go into it. So it's a freaking well done story between them two, and it's not emphasized at all. It's just, at the very end, it's like, you know, they hold hands, and it's like, oh, hey, that's great. You know, you didn't go deep into this bullshit, but, you know, you created a few awkward moments. You created, you know, these two kind of not really liking each other, and then they start to like each other, and then they start to, you know, feel for each other. And it just worked really well. As far as the final boss win, this was probably the most epic final boss fight in this entire game, and it's you fight Ustanak in this like lava chamber, and it's just because that you're in this oil rig and it's underground and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, you know, I can roll with it. You know, I can roll with lava being there because they're fucking deep ass underground, and you know, you dig deep enough, well, you'll more than likely to run into lava. But anyway. That fight goes on, Sherry and Jake defeat it, and then you have like this chase sequence where you're on this train trying to escape the facility, and Ustanak makes his appearance again. I mean, he's beaten and battered. You can tell you've kicked the shit out of him, but it's time to deliver the final blow. Jake and Sherry, you know, they team up again, and they take down Ustanak, and Ustanak has a very worthwhile death. And I think he was actually, of the three antagonists in the game, he was probably the best one. The gameplay also does start to feel like a chore again because, again, you're fighting Yavos. You don't fight zombies in this one. You just fight the Yavos, their mutations, and there's a couple other enemies you fight. There is this chainsaw freak guy that you meet when they arrive in China, and this guy is just fucking batshit crazy. He's got like this, not really a sinister laugh, but just kind of goofy laugh, but it's also kind of creepy. He's like, and, you know, he's got like this biological chainsaw that's, I think it's made out of like just organic material and then like bones for the teeth of the blade, and I was just like, wow, this guy's fucking just ripping shit up. And you know, he lasts a while too, but he wasn't really a challenging boss, but he was kind of a fun boss at the same time. But yeah, the final boss fight in this scenario was really well done. I mean, I loved the crap out of it. I felt awesome after I won. And the end sequence is that Sherry just basically says, yeah, we got Jake's blood, you know, the C-Virus cure is underway, it's being produced, and all that other good stuff. I was like, yay, good guys win. And then the best moment of that entire story happens, and that's Jake sitting on a bike looking up at Sherry's plane taking off, and he's in like this all-black attire. He looks almost like what Wesker had on when you fought him when he was with Jill and you were with Sheva and you were fighting in that little temple area. And then he's on this bike, and then he, you know, looks up, he smirks, he's like, alright, let's see what, you know, the world has in store for me. Right before he takes off, I was like, put some shades on, dude. Do it. Just do it. What does he do? He puts some fucking shades on. I'm like, yes! I had to clap for that, because I was like, yes, that's awesome. I had a fangasm right there. But that's just because I was a Wesker fanboy. I thought Wesker was an awesome villain. Even in 5, I liked him, even if he was kind of a generic villain. You know, that was more worthwhile, that would have fit better in like a James Bond type movie. But Jake's and Sherry's scenario, well done. Again, Chris's impure scenario, And another thing about Jake is that I think this is how Dante and the new DMC should have been, because him and Dante kind of have that similar personality. They both act like, you know, just smart asses. They like to fuck around. They don't really take stuff too seriously. But in the end, they can, you know, when shit's on the line, when everything they do kind of matters at that point, then they start to put their head into things and like, okay, yeah, we're in a serious situation. We need to do stuff. We need to do it right. And his character also shines again when him and Chris have like this little confrontation, and he's like, you know, he wants to kill Chris because Chris killed his dad, and you know he never got to know his dad, but he does learn eventually that his dad was a fucking douchebag and whatnot. But he's like, you know what, Chris, you and me, our business, it can wait, because you know shit, we got shit that we need to do. The world's in a freaking fucked up situation right now, so you and me, we'll handle our business once all this is settled. So once this is done, you and me, we're gonna have a little chat, and then they kind of go their separate ways. Touching into the final one, which is the Leon and Helena one, which I actually got more points out of this one for some reason. I actually looked, I guess, deeper into that, but the zombies in this game are fucking vicious motherfuckers. I mean, you become scared of the environment because you see these zombies just kind of laying, or you see these corpses laying around, and you're wondering, is this one going to come to life and try to fucking munch on my legs or jump on me or anything like that? The Yavos never have that, so there's no tension. As I said, the zombies, they create a lot of tension. They're aggressive, and they come in masses. I mean, they come in big masses. There's like, at least, you know, you could have 20 zombies on screen at once just chasing after you. I know that doesn't sound like a lot when you compare it to like Dead Rising, but for Resident Evil, that's, wow. I was going to complain about the luchador jump, which I mentioned in the first video, but once you figure out what they do before they actually do it, it's actually a fairly easy ability of theirs to dodge. Because they'll do like this kind of weird like little dance type deal, and you know they'll look like they're ready to just fucking lunge at you. And once they do that, all you gotta do is just roll out of the way, you're good to go. So basically, just aim your gun, press A, roll out of the way, you're safe. They won't. They'll crash on the ground. They'll be there for a bit, and then you can just stomp their head and kill them instantly. So, in all honesty, I can't really complain about the luchador jump when it's actually kind of easy to dodge. There were a few, I guess, I don't even know if it's a glitch or what it is. Maybe, like, the game has problems recognizing physical barriers. But you'll be kicking a zombie. Like, your kick will be midway through, and then they start to do the little grab, but their grab thing goes through before your kick lands through. Even though, if it was like real life, that kick would, you know, knock that zombie's head off. Which, that only happened maybe 4 times with me, but it did kind of get annoying and stuff like that. And when they grab you, they seem to do a lot of fucking damage compared to the Yavos. It just seemed like in Leon's scenario, I took more of a beating. Even on amateur, I took a hell of a beating just trying to bring these fuckers down. And then there's this underground bit where you're running through the city, but you end up into this sewer, and then you end up in a subway. And I kid you not, at least 5 feet away from the railroad tracks. And even though the train came by, I backed away from it. But for some reason, Leon teleported onto the tracks, and I got killed. And I was like, this is fucking stupid. I was off the tracks. There's no way that train fucking hit me. Unless Leon just went like, I'm just going to go walk on the tracks. Yeah, okay, whatever. And that was just one instance, though. The trains don't play that big of a role in the actual game, and there's only like 3 of them you encounter, and they're easy to dodge, but I just thought that was bullshit since I wasn't even on the tracks to begin with. Helena and Leon are a good pairing. They really are. There's a lot of mystery between the two of them. Like, they don't know much about each other. They don't really trust each other all the way, and Helena's kind of like, yeah, this is my fault, because once Leon shoots the president, it's like, yeah, okay, so this is happening. Helena's just, like, okay, it's my fault. Let's go to this cathedral. You'll have all the answers there. And by the end of the game, you understand, like, why she did what she did. And you don't really hate her for it, because you kind of... You don't feel bad for her at all, and that's because she's doing it for her sister, who was used as leverage against her. And, it made her a likable character. It really... Because she, once the people that were holding her sister, like, pretty much... once she realized their actual nature, then she's pretty much said, fuck you guys, I'm sticking with Leon, and she fights with you all the way to the end. So, points to her for that. What else do we got? Oh, the environments. Again, I'm touching on the environments, and they really are scary. When you're playing as Leon and Helena, they are scary environments, because, you're waiting for, like, the zombies just to jump out and grab you, and just do all this crap, and now that they're really freaking aggressive, like they were in Resident Evil 3, you really are. You have this sense of insecurity. And I used the cover system so I could peer down hallways. That way I could see what I'm walking down instead of just, oh yeah, I'm just going to doody-doo over here. So the only time I was using the cover system was to scout out hallways or rooms or whatever that I have to, do this corner turn. So that way I don't like walk into a zombie that just happens to be standing right there, right in front of my face and grab me and do damage to me. and that was the only time I ever used the cover system. And like once you get into these more opened up environments, you don't even use it at all. And there were some variety in zombies. There's this one that like does this kind of shriek and it draws the other zombies to him. And then there was this really big fat dude that I thought was it looked like a take on the boomers from Left 4 Dead, but it wasn't really a boomer. It was just a big guy that can take a lot of damage, and the way you deal damage to them is you shoot their legs, which it made sense considering it's a big guy. You take out his legs, he can't fucking move. There were also times that zombies felt like bullet sponges, in that whenever you shot them, there was no like, oh crap, you know, they didn't like jump or react to the bullet. It was just like, oh yeah, bullet's in me, cool. I'm still coming after you. You fire like 10 bullets into that sucker, he's still walking. Then you fire the 11th one, and oh, all of a sudden he's knocked back a little bit, or he falls down, or whatever. The game does make you want to aim for the legs, though, if they're far away and there's a lot of them. You want to take out the legs of the guy that's in the very front. That way, all the other time he's just kind of trip and fall over, and then you like toss in a grenade, blow them all up. It did do that, and I do understand that, but still, when I'm shooting a zombie in its fucking head, it should either die or stumble back. Or if I'm shooting it in the arm, its arm should, like, you know, sway back or something. I'm not asking for a lot of realism. I'm just saying a bullet should affect this fucker, especially when it's a shotgun and he just kind of, like, you know, it just goes into him and he doesn't even react to it. I don't know, maybe it's a glitch. But zombie dogs were especially bad with it. Even, like, unless it's a shotgun, and even then, you have to be, like, up in their face, and by the time you're up in their face, they're jumping after you and crap. And they deal a lot of damage for, you know, being what they are. But thankfully you don't really encounter that many. In fact, I think they're only in like the first 2 chapters, and after that you never run into them again. So they have a very small presence in this game. What else? Yeah, zombies create a feeling of anxiety as opposed to the predictable Yavos, because Yavos are predictable. You know what they're going to do. Zombies, on the other hand, their shit's random. Back to the QuickTime events. There's the one that Sherry and Jake do, and then there's this one. The fucking you're in this car and you have to do a QuickTime event just to start the car and look for the key. The other one is when you're in this airplane and you're trying to fly an airplane, and there's a QuickTime event for it. There were some bits of it that I was like, okay, yeah, cool, I can roll with this. But then there were other parts where I was just like, the fuck? Like when you're pulling the lever back to put it into manual pilot instead of autopilot, you have to like press the X button or rotate the analog one. I forget which one you do. But I was like, really? You know, you couldn't just make this a cinematic where he just pulls it back and then he's trying to drive the plane. That would have been so much better, and it would have created tension a lot better than this QuickTime event. Because you create cinematics in games, intense games at that, to give people like a more of the you explore the story, and you're listening to the dialogue, and then all of a sudden this button prompt pops up. You're like, oh wait, shit, crap. But by the time this one had happened, I was like, okay, I'm anticipating when all these QuickTime events are happening, so I picked up on generally when they were going to happen. But for people that are playing Leon's campaign for the first time, they're going to fuck up because they're seeing this fucking cinematic playing, and they're like, whoa, wait, I was supposed to press that there? Oh, wow, crap. And then you have those running sequences. It's the same fucking thing. You're like, oh, wait, crap. And you misstep once, and you're dead. And you have to redo it all over again. It's retarded. It really is. The subway sewer bit did feel kind of like Left 4 Dead, because you go through this subway car and there's like a couple of people you meet down there. They're like, help me, and then they, of course they're fucking stupid and they open up doors that allow more zombies in, and then you have to take them out. And that's another nice thing, is that out of all the zombies you encounter, you don't necessarily have to kill all of them. In fact, there are parts of the game that actually it encourages you to run from them and conserve your ammunition. And playing through Leon's scenario, I'm like, this should have been the whole game. This should have been how the game worked, because the Yavos do not create any kind of sense of insecurity, anxiety, terror, tension, anything. They're just there. They're just obstacles you have to just take out. They're the pebbles in the road that you have to move so you can have a smooth ride forward. That's all they are. And I hated the Yavos. I hated the Ganados, and I didn't mind the Ganados as much because they were new at the time, but when the Magini came around, I'm like, oh god, these guys again, wow. Capcom thinks, oh yeah, we'll just rename them. No, it's still the same fucking monster, it's just a different setting, that's all it is, different name. But yeah, touching on that again, this is what Resident Evil 6, hi, I'm Sean Connery. this is what RE6 should have been from start to finish throughout all the campaigns. It should have been massive cities getting infected with zombies. I don't care if you throw in like super mutant monsters. That's fine. You know, if you want some agile monsters and stuff like that, that's cool. Because the first Resident Evil fucking had those, i.e. the hunters. And, you know, it would have worked a lot better. It really would have. Another thing that grated on me, with the corpses being part of the environment, you couldn't shoot, like, it. Well, I mean, it works and then it doesn't work. It works because it's supposed to, you know, be whatever, but you should be allowed to shoot the corpses. You really should. But whenever you shoot one that's going to become a zombie, nothing happens. Then when you walk up to it, next thing you know, it's attacking you, even though you shot that fucker in the head like 5 times. It's like, really? Really, Capcom? What the fuck? There are also random noises that happen that make you more alert, like, oh, yep, something's going to jump in, nope, nothing happens, and then you don't hear any noises, then something jumps in, you're like, oh my god, you threw me off. And you know, I was thinking back to like Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2, where you hear noises and stuff like that, and you're like, oh crap. I mean, it wasn't exactly giving me the whole like, oh, I'm too fucking scared to play this. It was just creating tension with me. I'm like, okay, I gotta focus on what I'm doing. I gotta pay attention to what I'm doing, where I'm going, what's around me. And you know, there are times where I'll be looking back to see if there's a zombie behind me, because again, unless they like are looking dead at you and, you know, barreling forward at you, they don't make any noises. They'll have the little, but you have to really pay attention to when that happens, because, you know, Helena could be talking and then you miss it. Next thing you know, zombies right behind you. And I was like, that freaking works. Although that didn't happen very often, so it didn't, like, you know, annoy me or anything like that. But the survivors you meet also kind of give a sense of drama, a little bit of horror. Like, you know, you see all these people losing everybody that they care about, their homes being destroyed and all that other crap. You're like, whoa, you know, it's shit's really happening. Wow, I actually feel bad for people. Touching on that, there was this one bit where you and Helena go into this house, and there's this television on with a newscast, but it looks so fucking funny. And the reason that is the newscaster guy is completely still. It's like a still image, but the mouthpiece is moving. There's like a little mouth moving. I was like, wow, this looks fucking great. Like, it looks so bad that it's freaking hilarious. And, you know, they couldn't afford, like, what, just a guy moving. Hell, even Doom 3, and that game was made in, like, what, 2003? Doom 3 had a freaking a live action fucking newscaster guy talking that was at least moving, at least looked like a real person. But this was just freaking hilarious. There was also, going back to the luchador zombie jump thing for a bit, there was actually one time that I thought was absolutely hilarious. You and Helena are in this hallway, and there's like these windows, and zombies are coming in. I'm sitting there popping all these zombies. Next thing you know, a freaking zombie comes flying through the window and crashes onto me, and I was like, wow, that happened. You know, I was like, oh my god, oh wow, that's actually kind of funny. You know, at first I was pissed, but then I just started laughing, like, okay, that was actually kind of funny. There were a lot of encounters where it's like you're holed up in a room fighting against zombies trying to survive, and I didn't mind those at all. Because, you know, that's kind of how Left 4 Dead was, and I have fun with Left 4 Dead because Left 4 Dead creates tension because its enemies are fucking relentless. The zombies in this, relentless. The other more advanced zombies, relentless. The Avos, they're just going to duck in a corner and take pot shots at you. The first chapter of Leon and Helena's story is fucking chaotic too. I mean, everything is happening everywhere. There's just shit happening everywhere. Although I will say that there was this one bit where it's you and there's like 3 other people with you, and you're fighting off these zombies, trying to survive, and all of a sudden this police car just kind of rolls out of nowhere and runs everybody over. I'm like, really? It didn't even prompt you. The camera like focuses on it for a bit, but by the time you're running away, that thing's already crashed into you. So, you know, you don't hear somebody say, oh, look at that, you know, and then camera pans, and then you should have enough time to like roll out of the way and shit like that. But no, not so much. And that was another thing that annoyed me, is that it doesn't prompt you at times when it should. There was a church bit that was kind of eerie and kind of creepy, but you know, not quite as intense as the city bit in the first chapter. But it did have its moments of like, wow, this feels like Silent Hill now. And you know, you open up this like underground tomb thing, and this like I basically call it the cloud monster because it's the reason that the infection's even happening. It comes out, you have at it, it turns people into zombies. I'm like, it's kind of like a boss battle, but it kind of isn't, because you do fight more of them later on. And, you know, I thought, wow, you know, I'm like, oh shit, I'm scrambling to kill this guy because I want to save the people. I know some of you are like, fuck these people, I just want to live. But, me, I was trying to save as many people as I could. I was trying to kill this thing so I didn't have to deal with, you know, that many more zombies. And I did eventually kill it, and there were a few people left, although most of them had pretty much died or turned into zombies. There were also a couple of puzzles in Leon's scenario that weren't, like, stupid, you know, like the Sherry one where you have to find 3 chips laying in the middle of a fucking blizzard. You know, you have to move statues around, you have to find these bells and shoot them. There were another bit where you have to, like, turn these statues off where they're, like, shooting crossbows at you. Although I felt that one was kind of pointless and kind of stupid, but I rolled with it. I'm like, at least it's giving me something besides Yabos. At least it's doing that. At least it's adding more to the game, not just, you know, bullshit where you have to run around and shoot things, and that's the end of it. The Cloud Monster, though, has, like, this kind of fucked up laugh, too. It's got, like, a double voice type of deal, and it's kind of high-pitched, and it screeches when it's in pain. And it's just like, wow, this thing's kind of weird. You know, it's not unnerving exactly, but it is just kind of bizarre looking. It's like, ugh. You know, not very settling looking. You do fight Deborah as a boss, and Deborah is supposed to be Helena's sister, who was used as leverage against her so that Simmons can make her work for him. And the fight with her is a bit long, but I thought it was fun in the end. And the way she transforms, I kind of had like this Alexia vibe. Although there was one bit where she's kind of just like looking down at you and she's like touching on herself, and I was like, I don't know how to react to that. That was just weird. Unless Deborah was just a really, really sultry person when she was a human. I mean, I'll be honest with you, she had the curves to be just that, but, you know, it's alright, whatever. The fight with her was kind of fun. When you're playing as Leon, you do fight the Ustanak again, but it's that brief encounter where it's just where it's you, Helena, Sherry, and Jake fighting him. It doesn't last long. I mean, it's fun, but it doesn't last long. There's also this swimming bit after the church and underground bit where you're swimming through and you're trying to find a way out of here. And the only reason that annoyed me was because you had to look for these little pockets of air. I was like, okay, that makes sense. You know, you have so much oxygen. But when you run into these floating zombie corpses, they grab you, you break free. But when you try swimming forward again, oh, no, they grab you again. And they grab you again until finally your partner breaks free. But by that time, half your oxygen's fucking gone and you don't make it. Unless you can find a oxygen or a little opening where you can catch your breath and then go back down. And I was just like, really? Seriously, this is... I died a few times, and it pissed me off because it gave me a lower grade and all this other shit. I'm going to try to keep this either at 40 minutes or just below 40 minutes, but this is going to be the big review. I'm not going to make 3 videos that are like nearly an hour long each. I'm just going to make this one. But the last boss fight in Leon's scenario, I thought was a little too redundant, a little too much teaser deaths. But when it did end, it was fucking awesome. But you fight him in like 5 different forms. His first form is like this kind of tiger-looking monster, like a skinned tiger is what it looks like. And then you have to shoot him until he turns back into his human form. And then he, that's when you kind of start dealing the actual damage to him so that you can defeat him. You do that on a subway. That was fun. And then once you beat him, I was like, wow, that was kind of anticlimactic. Okay. I was like, you see him like explode, and you're like, oh, well, that was that. All right, fine. Then you end up in China. You run through. You try to escape and all that other crap. And then you fight him again, and this time he turns into a fucking T-Rex looking monster. I was like, what? I was like, all right, well, let's have fun with this. And then Ada shows up. She helps you out, and it's you, Helena, and Ada versus this guy. And then you take him out again, and then you're on your way up, and then you're making your way to this helicopter, and then you're up on this elevator, and then the elevator breaks, and you have to climb the cables. Oh, who should appear? Fucking Simmons again, and this time he's fighting Ada, who's not in her helicopter. So Ada and Simmons have at it. You try to give her some support by sniping at him from afar. And then, you finally catch his attention, and then he starts coming after you. You're climbing up the cables again. Then you make it to the roof, and then you have yet another bout with him. And this time he's just like this big blob, basically. Like it's him in his human form, but there's like this, all the mutated crap's just kind of hanging out of him, behind him. And he's taking zombies and absorbing them into him, which I thought was cool. But I'm like, this would have been cool if this would have been like maybe the second encounter with him. You know, he kind of shows up on the roof of the helipad instead of down there with Ada. So yeah, you know, it becomes kind of redundant. And then, so you get past him, and then you see all the zombies like munching on him. You're like, okay, well, we're probably gonna see him one last time for like that final shootout. And then you're making your way through, and then Leon gets knocked off by something, and you look up, oh, what should appear but a giant fucking bug? And I'm like, the fuck did this thing come from? And then I hear Helena say something like, oh my god, he just won't quit. I'm like, wait, that's Simmons? Okay, so he went from a tiger to a T-Rex, and now he's a fucking giant bee. What the hell? Well, it was a giant bug anyways. It was, you know, some form of a giant bug. So you have at it with him again, and that fight is long. Unless you know what the hell you're doing, that fight is long. Fortunately, they throw zombies at you, and you have to use the zombies to help you win, basically, because he tries to use them to heal himself. But that fight was, like, stupid long. I think that took me nearly 30 minutes to actually get through from start to finish. And there was no, like, intense moments where I was on the verge of death, but I was like, this is just long. This is just way too fucking long. And then you make it to the helicopter. Oh, he appears one last time, but he's all beat the shit. Oh, what should appear? A rocket launcher. Because what's a Resident Evil game without finishing the final boss without a rocket launcher? So you grab the rocket launcher, shoot him in the head. He falls down to his death. Now, this was, I think, a very like awesome moment, and that is he gets impaled on this like pillar, and then like his blood starts pouring down. But around the pillar is the umbrella symbol, basically. And then, like where like this kind of whitish area is, it starts becoming red, and then it forms the umbrella logo. And I was like, oh, that's. I'm wondering if that's foreshadowing something for like the next installment, like Umbrella makes its big return or some shit like that, or Neo Umbrella gets like high and mighty in power or whatnot, and they're not just a simple terrorist organization. Because I don't think Simmons was the head honcho at all. I think he was just kind of like the behind the scenes type of guy. Like he was the one working with the United States government, and he was their insider guy basically. But there's some higher ups behind him, because there were some people that were coming to help him, but then like the pilot says nope, leave him, or the guy helping with him says nope, leave him, and then they fly away. And I was like, huh, interesting. But going on with that, again, the main bad guy, i.e. Simmons, his motivation was stupid, because basically him and Leon and Helena have this like little confrontation, and he's like, I had to take out the president. He was going to, you know, reveal everything. What do you think that would have done to our credibility as a nation and all this other stuff? I'm like, you're fucking kid. What? What? The credibility of the United States is the reason you did this? And because the president was going to come clean with everything, you decided to kill him and infect 2 cities? What? I was literally like at a loss for words at that. I was like, what? So basically he was like, I love this country. I was doing everything for America. You know, he was all, America, fuck yeah. I was like, no. Even Wesker had better motivation than this shit. Even Sadler had better motivation than this shit. And I'm like, wow. I mean, if he wanted to be God or something, I could have rolled with it. I mean, yeah, it's been done a million times before, but it would have been a lot better than this shit. So, yeah, he does it for the sake of, you know, being, you know, doing it off with the red, white, and blue so Americans can have a freaking world all to themselves, yada, yada, yada. I was like, this is stupid. This plot is stupid. Or at least the plot with him is fucking stupid. The plot with the Ada clone was, you know, it was confusing as all hell would get, but at least it had something, it had a ring to it. It was her wanting to spread the virus globally, so, you know, basically she had the same motivation that Wesker did, and she wants, you know, a world full of perfect beings, and all the unworthy ones can go die in a fire, basically. But yeah, that's basically a Resident Evil 6 review, the complete, you know, thing. I just said, fuck it, I'm just going to roll this into one big video instead of like 5 of them or something like that. But in short, did I like Resident Evil 6? Yes. Did I see where a lot of the negative criticism came from? Yes. Did I think it deserved something like a 3 or a 4.5? No, not at all. Gamespot does touch on, I won't say Gamespot, I may have said it in my first video, but I will say Gamespot did not really lose this credibility for it, but its score I thought was a little bit questionable, and I think there was a little bit too much hate geared toward it. I think they let the negatives outshine the positives, when for me, the positives and the negatives do kind of go head-to-head in some places. They do kind of even each other out, but there's more positives to note in this one than the negatives, because, I mean, if they're saying Resident Evil's having an identity crisis, to fucking correct them, it's been having an identity crisis since Resident Evil fucking 4. So, kiss my sweet American ass, GameSpot. Don't give me this identity crisis bullshit. Resident Evil has had trouble figuring out who the fuck it, or what the fuck it was, since Capcom decided to go the Call of Duty path. And that started in Resident Evil 4 because they want to appeal to Western audiences, because they want to be the, you know, the whole Me Too type of deal that Omega Alpha Sin has explained it as. I mean, he goes on just like, he has multiple videos of just going off on rants about how stupid and fucking idiotic Capcom is. And I'll admit that out of all the gaming companies that I've ever bought products from, I fucking hate them the most, because they're handing off Devil May Cry, they're doing stupid shit with their other franchises, they cancel Mega Man 3 Legends because, oh, fan involvement wasn't enough. I'm like, what the fuck, Capcom? You know, you say, you know, you're going on this downward spiral, your credibility's getting shot to hell. Even, I mean, I'll stand with GameSpot and saying that, yeah, Capcom doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, but they should have been going at them like this, you know, when 4 rolled around, but instead they herald Resident Evil 4 as like the greatest fucking Resident Evil around. I mean, I'll give them points for that. Yeah, it was a good Resident Evil game. I don't know about the greatest of all time, but it was, you know, it was a good game altogether. But now they're just turning around. Basically, I'm calling them out on the hypocrisy that they're having. This, like, the 4.5s and stuff should have gone to Resident Evil 5 if it was going to happen at all. But no, it has to happen with Resident Evil 6 because, oh, Resident Evil 6 can't figure out what it is. You know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. If you wanted to say that, said that, you should have said that in Resident Evil 5. The fans have been crying it out since fucking Resident Evil 4 came out. They're like, it's not the same anymore. We don't know what it's trying to be. Yeah, when I was playing 4, I was like, what is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be action-adventure, horror, shooter, what? The correct answer, a little bit of everything. So, Resident Evil's gone to this target crowd instead of appealing to the fans that got it started up in the first place. But that's Capcom in a nutshell for you. They just want to appeal to the biggest majority crowd that will make them the most money. And even the Call of Duty people are like, oh, okay, so this game exists. Cool. You know, it's stupid. It's a fucking popularity contest that isn't even working for Capcom because they're appealing to the wrong audience. They're appealing to an audience that doesn't give a shit about them. That doesn't give a shit about Resident Evil. Unless it's like the casual gamers, you know. They just buy the games just to buy the games. They don't have a particular genre that they're into. Me, I'm kind of a middle between casual and hardcore. There are a lot of franchises I get behind. I want them to stay consistent. Now, I don't mind it when, you know, you decide to go revolutionary and try to innovate or create something new, you know, which Resident Evil 4, I'll say, okay, that was the attempt to kind of incorporate more action. Okay, it didn't really work so well for the fans. We'll try it again with 5. No, they tried it again with 5, but they went full fucking force with 5, and that was the problem with the game. Is there was never any tension, there was never any horror, there was never any reason to really question your own abilities to get from start to finish, because it's just one guideline tedious chore of you going from point A to point B to point C to finish. This one, it's the same thing. Bar Leon's campaign, it's going from point A to point B to point C to finish. In Leon's campaign, you are actually trying to fucking survive because there's actually shit trying to get you. Jake and Sherry's scenario, it's debatable. I'll debate that one. But in the end, I will say that because the Yavos are there, they don't create any tension. They're fucking complacent enemies that don't do shit unless, you know, you pretty much drag them out of their fucking corner. Which would add on to the fact that the cover system is fucking pointless. But anyway, guys, I've rambled on for almost an hour now, and this is going to be the one big video. So, that being said, I'm Luca Blight, and this has been Resident Evil 6. And I will see you all soon for whatever video I decide to upload next.